Well, this year's chamber gathering couldn't be more different. Last year we all got together to eat the usual rubber chicken dinner, try to digest the speaker's bad jokes, and listen as the parties served up their legislative priorities for the upcoming session. Who would have known that a global pandemic would force this year's event to go virtual, or that an armed insurrection at our nation's capital would postpone our legislative preview until we're almost halfway through the 2021 General Assembly? So this year, we don't have to tell you which bills are likely to pass first. As Douglas Adams, who wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, put it, nothing travels faster than the speed of light, with the possible exception of bad news, which obeys its own special laws. What rocketed through the Senate and the House during the first week of our 2021 legislative gathering was just that, bad news. Let me be specific. First, there were multiple partisan gestures toward taking power from the executive branch and shackling the ability of this governor and every future governor to meet emergencies like drought, tornadoes, floods, ice storms, earthquakes, and yes, even pandemics. Second was the routine, constitutionally flawed bid to punish Franklin Circuit Court Judge Philip Shepard for rulings that some in power don't like. And then there was House Bill 1, an effort to cede local control during the pandemic to the CDC, a proposal so flawed it had to be amended when we came in on a Saturday morning, leaving members little time to question it before having to vote. That's okay. If the courts don't strike it down, businesses will need someone to come and clarify exactly which standards to follow. So maybe we'll get back to that one. Throw in a few abortion bills, and that's it. After months of legislators having to sit on the sidelines during the first global pandemic of our lifetimes, those were the pressing priorities presented by the majority. All across Kentucky, the coronavirus has taken victims and imposed hardship. It has destroyed jobs and businesses as it has interrupted education and ravaged families. The crisis is isolating, but the hardship is collective. Kentuckian Tyler Childers wails in his song White House Road about drinking moonshine, getting high, and taking his troubles to the high wall, where I assume he can't actually do anything about his problems except hole up. I think that's a pretty good description of what we've been doing here for way too long, taking our state's troubles to the high wall instead of doing something resolute about them. We can do better than that. The first place to begin addressing our challenges is in the budget. Governor Beshear has suggested a good and balanced approach that prioritizes help for those affected by the pandemic, including the unemployed, small businesses, and small nonprofits, as well as repairing some of the past damage inflicted by cuts to education. It also steadies the wobbly public pension system. It adds to the cruelly inadequate ranks of social workers, gives teachers and state workers a small but overdue raise, restores the abandoned Commission on Women and the Office of Minority Empowerment. It renews support for the Commission on Human Rights, invests in school construction, puts more broadband installation across the state, something we've all seen we need during the pandemic, and much more. Now, what's missing from the budget is new revenue, something we do need when the federal stimulus money disappears. An ambitious revamp of the tax and revenue system that restores fairness to the state income tax and positions revenues to grow with the economy, it'll likely have to wait until next year, when fewer votes are required to pass it. That's ultimately our long-term solution if we want to fully fund government, although certainly dealing with legalized gaming and marijuana would help. I'm still optimistic. We have to be. The pain from this pandemic is real, and it isn't partisan. We need to help small businesses desperately. People are still struggling with unemployment and uncertainty. We need to make investments in public health, mental health, small business relief funds, and unemployment. But in addition to the pandemic, this year has been defined by another crisis, racial justice. Beyond the myriad moral reasons, beyond the fact that innocent people are dying, we cannot attract new businesses to a place perceived as lagging behind in racial justice. We need to reimagine policing in ways that include better recruitment, better training, and better pay, as well as effective civilian oversight, more transparency, bail reform, and a rethinking of how we enforce certain drug laws. But it's at least as urgent, if not more so, that we attack the sources of endemic violent crime, concentrations of cyclical poverty, Inaccessible healthcare, inadequate housing, failed educational efforts, underfinanced social services, systemic racism, and paucities of opportunity. Democratic and Republican senators have worked together during the interim on solutions. Those need to be brought forward. If this is meant to be our legislative State of the Commonwealth address, then we must admit our Commonwealth is not perfect. We certainly have our challenges. But as our great local author Silas House put it, I am never ashamed to be a Kentuckian. My state is a complicated, beautiful place with a rich heritage and people who have contributed a huge amount to the American experiment. I will defend the state to all outsiders, even as I complain about its flaws. Flaws are challenges. Change is opportunity in a different coat. As the great Spider-Man put it, we are who we choose to be. My hope is we choose to believe our futures are bound together. The yearning for work and hope in hard-hit coal counties is not unlike the search for opportunity in Louisville's West End. The anxiety of a child without a stable family, the anxiety of a family without regular paychecks, affordable housing, accessible healthcare, educational opportunity, and essential social services. Those anxieties are the same, whether along a rural road or on a neglected city street. People near my neighborhood are reminded of that fact every morning at 10 a.m. Since the beginning of the pandemic, every day since March, a guy who lives nearby steps outside and rings a bell. The ringing has changed its meaning over time, but it still ties us together every morning as a small act of community. He reminds us we're not alone. In another great song, Tyler Childers vows to help his friend Cody bury somebody they both loved. He promises, "I will follow you to Virgie. That's what us boys are for, to help you out when you get weary and you can't go no more." There are a lot of weary people in Kentucky right now. Let's help each other out.